We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Chicago Tribune Ed Board member Kristen McQueary on this edition of Rising. And Kristen, you penned an op-ed for the Tribune this week, your column, I should mention. Was it every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday.
All right, There you go. Lock that in. That Rauner's only shot for re-election, to the extent he has one, is to fight the proposed graduated state income tax that is being advanced by Spalding and Chicago Democrats. Their argument they're going to make, of course, which is always made, is what we're going to do here is provide 98% of Illinois families with tax relief, and we're going to make the millionaires and billionaires, people like me, JB will say, and Bruce Rauner. We're going to make them pay their fair share, and what could be more attractive than that? You think that he can effectively fight that because he's demonstrated that he's such a good messenger in the last 3 years.
I'm making the point that he doesn't have a lot in his toolbox, but if he wants to try to bring back some of the conservatives he lost in the primary, and if he wants to try to appeal to more independent Democrats, which you have to do to win statewide, he has to talk about taxes, that a vote for J.B. Pritzker is a vote for higher taxes, and try to build momentum around that issue, because even J.B. Pritzker supporters, many of them, do understand that a blank check to Springfield is not the answer, and they do, I think, view Bruce Rauner as the only stopgap between, the legislature and their pocketbooks.
But if the proposal, when it takes some sort of form with specific numbers, if that ever comes to pass over the next 6 months, if it is to reduce from 4.95 flat to, say, 3% for everybody under 75 grand and graduate up, so you're only talking about tax increases on those making 250 grand or more, which is sort of what Democrats have intimated, then that is a popular proposal in a vacuum, right? I mean, the public opinion polling on that is like a 70% favor that. Oh, you're going to give me relief, and you're going to stick it to, those guys that make all kinds of money, have all kinds of wealth. Well, Class MD politics works in this state.
It does. It's extremely effective. However, I think if you buy the argument that somehow this is not a revenue grab, and what you're doing here is getting voters to basically unlock the Constitution. So even in the first year, if it does, in fact, under the structure that they present, bring tax relief to most voters, you are giving them the keys to the bank to every year after that, as they're screaming for more revenue, to keep going back and adjusting that formula. And that is what has happened in a lot of other exodus states where you have high-income earners and middle-income earners leaving for places like Florida. That's what they do. They get you in the first year, but what they're talking about is a very structural change to the Constitution, and you cannot trust them. That, to me, is the broader issue. And I would point out, they talk about states like Wisconsin, which is a higher income tax state. I think the top bracket is upwards of 7%. But Wisconsin has had a graduated income tax since the 1920s or even before, and they introduced it on principle. They felt that it was a fairer way to tax. The Democrats here are trying to sell that. It's not true. That now they're trying to institute a progressive tax at the back end to deal with all the debt that they have accumulated. And I don't care if you make $1 million in the state, you are no more responsible to pay down the debts of the state that have racked up over the last 30 years than someone who makes $50,000 a year. So,
well, it's also this fallacy, isn't it, that they're suggesting that some people are going to escape this catastrophe called Illinois. Some people are going to get out unscathed. This is the lies they've been telling to public sector workers and future pensioners. This is the lie they're telling to low to middle income families. We're going to protect you. So don't worry, we got you, right? And now they're seeing their homes liquidated like everybody else's. But this is what they continue to sell. And the problem is those same people continue to buy it.
Yes.
Where's the enthusiasm right now? You make this point in your column. Where's the enthusiasm? Is the enthusiasm with Bruce Rauner, or is the enthusiasm with J.B. Pritzker? What does the prospect look like for Illinois right now with Trump and Rauner at the top of the ticket? Does it look like whether the blue wave comes ashore the rest of the country, it looks like it's coming ashore as we stand here in May in Illinois.
It does. I mean, the numbers in the primary alone look terrible for Bruce Rauner. And in speaking to a lot of candidates when we do endorsements, legislative races, even in places where Trump is popular, he is hurting the ticket. There's no question. So I don't expect that there's going to be any movement in the House or Senate that favors Republicans. Democrats are probably going to pick up seats. If you ask me today, the polling numbers have JB ahead. The other thing that I want to point out about the progressive, I don't even want to call it progressive. That's what they keep calling it, or the fair tax. Graduated income tax is the most neutral term. So they could have done this, obviously, over the 14, 16 years that they have had singular control of the House and the Senate. They didn't do it. They could have done it this year by a May 6th deadline to get it on the November ballot. If this is so important, if this is what is going to fix Illinois, they could have voted to put it on the ballot. Did they? No. They missed the deadline. So the soonest this could even happen now is 2020. And they did that.
Well, they're just waiting for another Republican governor to come along to do all their bad stuff for them, like Bruce Rauner has done over the last 3 years. If you're just patient enough, Republicans will capitulate and do your bidding for you. That's what we're seeing on every issue. Moral issues, public safety issues like guns. You've got people this week folding in with Don Harmon on gun licensing bill, suburban Republicans. So, part of the reason that you have the Democrats taking rhetorical positions that they don't have to back up with any particular action is because the Republicans, to borrow a Goldwaterism, don't offer choice, they offer an echo. And what I think you're on the cusp of is Democrats not having to worry about opposition except within their own ranks for position from the Republican Party as all. The Republican Party is on the cusp of becoming the California Republican Party, which is to say existing on paper only. You think you've had one party rule to this point in the state, in Chicago and in the state, under Madigan and Colorado? You haven't seen anything yet. When you have a Republican Party that is literally vestigial in the process, then you're going to really see the kinds of horrors that you haven't seen so far because Democrats haven't wanted to take those risks.
I see the remap drawing of 2020 if Pritzker wins, kind of a nail in the coffin. But I honestly don't know how we can get, in a worse position than we're in. Tax
pension income, graduated state income tax. I mean, you can borrow some of these ideas from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. I mean, you can. There's always more punishment to inflict.
But they've had, even when Pat Quinn was there for 6 years, he was begging for a graduate income tax proposal.
Right.
The Democrats are smart enough to just keep voters on the edges of not actually instituting change, like Madigan introducing, as he did this session, a resolution supporting a graduated income tax,
right,
which has no teeth whatsoever. But voters will buy it. I mean,
and he also has the latitude then to maybe it turns out we don't want to do the graduated state income tax. We don't want to make that a centerpiece of the fall campaign. Let's just go back to my millionaire surcharge idea from a couple of years ago. Yeah, and it turns out from Madigan, in a good year, he would be subject to that millionaire surcharge.
I know. It's just the the demagoguing from people like Pritzker and Madigan, at this class warfare that they wave the flag on, and here they are both. And we don't know how much Mike Madigan makes, but he said when that proposal came up, in a good year, it would impact him. But even that proposal, with Madigan standing on the floor trying to pitch it, couldn't get enough votes 2 times to get out of the House. So I do think there is a reluctance, even on the part of Democrats, to just keep going to that tax issue. But even as we're sitting here talking about this,
they just need the Republicans to surrender so it can be bipartisan, which is what happened last year.
Exactly, which everybody buys into like that's a logical argument. Well, we need to have some Republican votes on this income tax. Why? I've never understood that argument. But even the media buys into it. Like, well, Mike Madigan's not going to push this proposal unless he gets some buy-in from the other side.
Worse,
why would they do that?
Worse, 15 House Republicans bought into it. That's the worst part about it. I mean, well, okay, I guess, Madigan says we can't pass this without my vote, so I guess, I said I was opposed to structural tax increase and this and that, but Madigan needs my vote, so I might as well go over there and do his bidding. You want to talk about trying to unpack that logic.
I know, but several of them were reelected against Republicans who tried to shed light on that. So voters are culpable in this as well. But even as we're talking about, also we had Mark Glennon on. I mean, the state is, as you know, circling the drain. I don't know how big the drain is. We've been doing this for 15 years. But you know what they did last week in the House and Senate? I mean, they spent time congratulating themselves for Illinois being the #1 state for pet protection laws. And they spent their only hour on the floor, I think, on Wednesday, waving to people in the gallery and taking personal privilege to talk about this or that, and then they adjourned. So, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. We are in crisis, and there's just no urgency.